Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and from your NPR station. From MathWorks, creators of MATLAB and Simulink software for technical computing and model-based design. MathWorks, accelerating the pace of discovery in engineering and science. Learn more at mathworks.com. And Made in Cookware, partnering with chefs like Tom Colicchio to bring professional-grade cookware to restaurants and home kitchens. Their cookware can be found at madeincookware.com.
It's Here and Now. Colleges are now sending out those closely watched acceptances and rejections. Many schools want students from a range of backgrounds, but one group that's been hard to reach is rural students. It's a lot of work for recruiters to get to small, out-of-the-way communities. There is, though, a new collective trying to change things, and it includes some of the country's top schools. NPR's Alyssa Nadworny reports from East Tennessee.
Any seniors that are here in the room, can I get a show of hands?
Crossville, Tennessee is a small city of 12,000 people between Nashville and Knoxville, just off Interstate 40. I'm here on a Wednesday evening after school at Stone Memorial High School.
Here's our whole list of majors in here.
About half a dozen college admissions officers.
We're known for our sciences.
From Yale, Vanderbilt, MIT, and Case Western Reserve.
We are in a metropolitan city. We are not the concrete jungle.
Are set up in the lobby outside the auditorium. They've got branded tables filled with swag.
So I'm going to give you a Teagle sticker for sure.
This stop in Crossville, far off their typical recruiting routes, is part of a multi-day swing through Tennessee. An effort for these colleges to beef up their outreach to rural communities. They're answering questions and meeting with students.
What's your acceptance rate? Like
4%.
how's your out-of-state tuition?
I don't know much about Yale, so is there anything that's important to know off the...
Yes.
Okay.
I can quickly give you an overview of some stuff.
What do you guys offer for extracurriculars?
About 100 or so students and their family showed up tonight.
I wasn't originally planning on applying to any Ivy League or prestigious schools.
Hanging around the Yale booth is Isabella Cross,
yes,
who will tell anyone how proud she is to be a rural kid.
We take care of each other around here. I mean, if we see you in Walmart, we're going to stop and talk to you for 45 minutes. We're going to ask how the kids are. We're going to ask how your mama's doing.
Despite her confidence, she still can't believe these schools are here in her hometown.
Coming down to little Crossville, Tennessee, a little no-name town.
A college fair like this, she says, it tells her
they heard us and they see us and that they know that there's small-town kids like me who have really big dreams.
And it's taken a long time. For years, colleges have paid little attention to rural students. Even though they graduate from high school at higher rates than urban and suburban students, they're less likely to go on to college, especially a faraway college out of state.
They've never come and taken an interest in us.
Karen Hicks is the lead counselor at Stone Memorial. She's been an educator here for more than 3 decades.
The big thing right now is rural, and they're finally seeing it, I guess, right?
She says to people who work in rural areas, the value that rural students have is pretty obvious, and it's not new.
I love it in the sense that it gives our kids opportunities. I hate that they didn't see it before.
There are 16 elite colleges that are part of this effort called STARS. They agree to visit rural high school students in exchange for financial help with travel costs and staffing. It's funded by a $20 million grant from a trustee of the University of Chicago, one of the participating schools. But these colleges do have an uphill battle. The first is just familiarity, says Amy Beth Strong, whose daughter Ellie Beth is a senior at Stone Memorial.
I think it's just exposure. I don't think they think that they can go there.
Or even is Yale?
See? I don't know of any kids, even in Knoxville area, where I have friends from college whose kids even said they were going to Yale. They were applying to Yale. It's not something that in our rural area that we hear.
Ellie Beth is planning on staying local. There's a community college just down the street.
I like it here, and all of my friends are here. Mostly everybody's going to stay close to home, I'm pretty sure, so.
And here in Tennessee, 2 years at community college is free. That's hard competition for these out-of-state, expensive schools, even though in reality, many top schools with their huge endowments offer a ton of financial aid.
High starting salary, it's a good ROI for students.
And although we are expensive on paper, we need.
A lot of students.
Lee Jones is a high school senior. who's finally made it to the front of the line to talk with the Yale rep.
What kind of physics program do you guys have?
Here on this
She drove an hour to be here tonight, and she's got her mom, Julie, with her.
She takes the highest rigor available at her school. That's the best she can do for where she lives, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Marley got a perfect score on her SAT. She's a great student. She hadn't even considered Yale. But at the college fair, she got to talk with real-life admissions folks from the Ivies, and it made her believe she could go.
I feel a lot more confident. Meeting representatives from them, it helped personalize them a little bit. It definitely made them feel more relatable.
In the weeks following that college fair, Marley applied to Yale and MIT. And a few weeks ago, she got an interview with MIT. Heading into the new year, she's feeling incredibly optimistic. Alyssa Nadworny, NPR News, Crossville, Tennessee.
Alyssa collaborated on that story with the Hechinger Report, a nonprofit newsroom covering education. Here and Now is a production of NPR and WBUR. I'm Scott Tong in Washington, D.C.
And I'm Deepa Fernandez in Alameda, California. Stay with us, there's more news ahead. It's Here and Now.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and from Road Scholar, a not-for-profit educational travel organization offering adventures for adults in more than 100 countries. Learn more at roadscholar.org/explore.
There's every reason to be looking at the scourge of gun violence, but there's also this other side of it that doesn't get a lot of attention, which is, what happens to guns that nobody wants anymore? And so we started taking a look at what that process looks like and discovered that it's actually not quite as simple as you might think.
I'm Natalie Kitroeff. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
Every weekday at 6:30 on Radio IQ.
Radio IQ is broadcasting in digital on WVTV.
Returning to open session, the Board of Supervisors held its annual organizational meeting earlier today at 2 o'clock in the board meeting room prior to the regularly scheduled board meeting. All board members were present. Opening ceremonies. Madam Clerk, would you please read the roll?
Mr. Mahoney.
Here.
Ms. Hooker. Here. Mr. Radford.
Here.
Mr. North.
Here. Item B, request to postpone, add to, or change the order of agenda items. Are there any requests to postpone, add to, or change the order of the agenda?
No, sir.
Fellow board members.
No, sir.
Okay, Mr. Kaywood.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I request that the board consider the addition of an additional closed meeting under Section J of the board's agenda pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A3 of the Code of Virginia to discuss or consider the acquisition of real property in the Cave Spring Magisterial District for a public purpose where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body.
Okay. Mr. Lubeck.
I have nothing further.
All right.
And I would invite the board if they could, if the board could call a vote with regards to
Sure.
Mr. Kaywood's request.
Okay, go on. Madam Clerk, call the roll for the item to add this third work session.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes, thank you. Item C, briefings. Briefing to discuss with the Board of Supervisors the 2024 real estate assessment. Board Chair recognizes Kenneth Fay, Director of Real Estate Valuation. Madam Clerk, can we please have copies of these after the meeting today? Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm here to discuss the 2024 real estate reassessment. Real estate values continue to increase in Roanoke Valley. Despite increased mortgage rates, the low inventory of available homes for sale has kept demand high. A little background before we get into the numbers. We assess all properties every year with an effective date of January 1. After the briefing today, reassessment notices will be mailed tomorrow, January 10th, to all Roanoke County property owners. Excuse me, the Code of Virginia requires all real estate to be assessed at 100% of fair market value. And our appraisal staff is responsible for identifying, locating, estimating the value of all properties within the county for tax purposes. It's the citizens who buy and sell real estate in the open market that establish values by how much they're willing to offer and accept for individual properties. Our staff evaluates these transactions and value properties equitably with similar surrounding properties. Differences exist between individual properties and between neighborhoods across the county. Real estate values has increased significantly at the local, regional, and most national markets, mainly due to limited supplies. The 2024 real estate assessment, the changes for 2024 are broken down by category, including residential, commercial, market value, and new construction. The overall percentage change is 8.63%. The residential portion is 9.14%. This is a countywide average. There are several neighborhoods throughout the county that experience even higher increases than that. The bottom portion of the slide shows how what changes are attributed to market differences as well as new construction. Market value in the residential sector represented the largest portion at 87.82% of the increase in values. As far as assessment accuracy, mass appraisal accuracy is measured by certain statistical tools. The International Association of Assessors Officers set the parameters for accuracy. This slide shows the most utilized standards and where Roanoke County's numbers place. It was earlier mentioned that Virginia values properties at 100% of market value. Virginia has adopted IAAO standards that says that median ratio should fall between 91 and 105%. The COD, or the coefficient of dispersion, is an indicator, weighs the most in measuring accuracy. The PRD, price-related differential, as a measure of assessment accuracy between low-value and high-value properties. Assessment growth history. We see growth in the last 10 years after the real estate market bottomed out in 2013. Following the global financial crisis of the mid-2000s, we started to see values recover in 2014. The overall assessment was driven by new construction from 2015 to 2017. In the last 6 years, increases in assessment has been driven by sales and a strong real estate market as new construction has remained steady. Assessment growth with inflation. These last 10 years compares assessment to inflation. Growth below inflation during the housing downturn, in line with inflation with a steady increase from 2016 to 2018. Inflation dropped off last year as the Fed increased the interest rates. Values increased this year at a lower rate than last year. The increase was influenced by limited inventory. The lower rate of increase is largely a result of lower home affordability. The median sales price is the middle point where there are as many sales below the median as there are above. Going back 10 years, there was only minimal changes in the median value. Up in the last couple of years, we've had seen more significant increases. This year, 2024, is $320,000. It's the median price. Residential sales by price range. As we've had significant increase in the past few years, we felt it necessary to group the residential sales in $200,000 increments. Previously, we did $100,000 increments. The largest number of sales in a price range includes a median price of $320,000, and that's the $201,000 to $400,000 range.
Mr. Fay, looking at this slide and then going back to the earlier slide where you had the PRD and we were at 101%. So if that's a problem, would the problem be in those last two columns in terms of assessments for higher priced properties being less than the assessments for lower priced? How does the PRD work? And I guess I was looking at, are those, is the 600 and 800 categories, is that the area where we're out of line?
This part of it, there's a lot really that goes into the PRD, to answer it simply. The lower valued homes is always a challenge because there are a lot of times the smaller homes. There's a decreased utility, and as the smaller the home, the higher the square foot. It's diminished utility and our economies of scale is always a challenge to keep those values at their amount. At the higher end, you've got a lot of, may not seem to make sense to lay person, but higher value homes generally are paid cash, and buyers aren't subject to an appraisal. And sometimes we see these sale prices beyond what we assess them at. And we'll go through every element of the property to make sure that it's properly assessed. And in the favor of uniformity, we can't push that value to meet the sale price and maintain uniformity. So sometimes there's a challenge at the upper end to, as far as the vertical assessments, which is measured by the PRD. I mean, we are 1.01, 1.0 is perfect, so we'd like to be perfect, but it's certainly within the range.
Okay, thank you.
Here we have the history of residential sales. This year's seen about a 25% drop. These are the number of qualified arm's length market sales shown in the last 10 years. Sales have certainly slowed. The number of sales are likely decreased this year due to increased mortgage rates, limited supply of available homes, and affordability issues. Included here is the number of foreclosures. The low number of foreclosure sales in recent past has been influenced by forbearance programs created as a result of relief during the pandemic. Now that many of the forbearance programs have ended, the number of foreclosure sales have started to show an increase. Assessment history, while we saw growth in both residential and commercial real estate assessments, the majority of total assessment growth is attributed to growth in residential assessments, particularly in single-family residential values. This pie chart shows an assessment comparison from 2014 to 2024, or versus 2024. The county has maintained similar percentage proportions in residential, commercial, multifamily properties over the past 10 years. It is noted, however, there is a slight increase of less than 2% commercial properties and added mainly to residential. Residential property was spurred by higher increases and more growth in single-family and multifamily properties in recent years. Even though the majority of the assessment increases were due to growth in residential real estate, Roanoke County continues to see strong growth in new construction. This chart shows our new construction history over the past 10 years. The increase in commercial new construction saw a larger than normal increase. A significant number of commercial properties that were near completion at the end of 22 were added in 2023, in addition to the properties that were actually completed in 2023. Commercial new construction is often more complex, and projects are larger, sometimes spanning multiple years, which leads to some fluctuation from year to year. Comparing this past year to 2014, there was significant more new construction in commercial real estate and less in the multifamily sector. Although less percentage-wise, residential experienced a larger increase in dollar amount than it did in 2014. Looking ahead to next year, with the exception of some markets outside of Virginia, local and national real estate markets continue to perform strongly due to limited supply of housing. The number of real estate sales continue to decrease. Now that the Fed has stopped rate increases, there is possibility of lower mortgage rates in 2024. Some property owners are considered locked in due to their low interest rate mortgages that were obtained during a time of unusually low rates. As mortgage rates may decrease, locked-in homeowners might be influenced to sell. In that case, we could have anticipate increase in inventory and with a leveling of values in late 2024. The 2024 assessment hearing dates, notices will be mailed out tomorrow, January 10th, and formal appeals will occur between January 18th and the 26th. Formal appeals to the Board of Equalization dates are April 25th, July 25th, and October 24th. And the dates for approval of tax rates for this year is March 12th, 2024, have a public hearing for the effective tax rate, and adopting the final tax rates on April 29th, 2024. Any questions?
Any questions, Board?
Just, some comments. And Ken, it's good to see our values increasing. We continue to heal from the Great Recession, and, we knew that was going to happen. You said earlier the sales ratio, or the market value for Code of Virginia is 100%. Mm-hmm. But the IAAO standard allows it between 91% and 105. So I've always heard from citizens that we're assessing around 90 to 91%. So that's you're verifying that in your report. The question about the trying to assess those higher priced properties, you're correct. New construction, there's a lot of cash buyers out there. So the only way to find those values, I assume you use building permit information for new construction? Do y'all ever go to look at the value of the building permit?
Yeah, we do use that.
Okay.
Sometimes they're not representative market value, sometimes they are, but we certainly use all tools at our disposal, and that's one of them.
Okay, good, yeah. So National Association of Home Builders shows the same trends that we see for 21 and 22, or 22, 23, but they're looking for a big rebound in 2024. So that projection is aligned with the national economics that we're hearing and seeing. The supply is still low, and so there's going to be a lot of housing in 2024. I've already got 5 on the books, so watch out.
Yeah, last year, our inventory level, I should say in 2022, in June, we reached a low inventory of 72. That's active listings of residential properties in Roanoke County.
Yeah.
We got as high as 160 toward the end of 23. I checked this morning, it was back down to 129.
Yeah.
Now, seasonally, that might be before the March buying season, so it might be a little bit low, but typically we're about 400. So it's certainly,
Right.
certainly low.
Yeah, very low. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I have a question. When you go back to the slide, if you could, please, that when you showed Mr. Mahoney and he had a question on. By the way, you've got some nice slides. I think some of them I've seen before last year. I'll go back further. Go back to the slide Mr. Mahoney asked a question about the bar chart, where you had 800.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was referencing our
The PRD.
No,
yeah.
right there. Back up. Stop,
Yeah.
right there. What I don't see that you have all the data on, and I'm sure you can produce this, is the $201,000 to $400,000 homes seem to be the dominant homes. I'd like to know if we could get an average for every range you got there of the increase in the assessment.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have that, but I can get that. You want
You
the
know-
average increase within each $200,000 range.
You know, the percents are fine for a measurement year over year. They're fine when you're describing something, but to have the average along with the percents or the ranges is good too. And I'm afraid we're going to have those questions, so I'd like to go ahead and get that information now. And that's not to say we won't have some more questions, because we're going to be the ones getting the questions. Well, you all may too. Your phones may light up down there, and but we may get some phone calls as well, or emails.
But historically, Ken, I thought you've given us reports in the past of the number of appeals going to the Board of Equalization. Now, I know you have a lot of administrative appeals to staff during the first month, but I thought over the past couple of years, you've given reports to us, and I think the number of actual appeals that have gone to the Board of Equalization has not been that great. Am I misremembering that?
We only had 16 all year last
Yeah,
year.
I mean, that's-
And those were scheduled. We only had actually heard maybe 9 all year, 36,000 parcels.
I mean, I think when citizens look at it, yeah, they're going to look at, oh, gee whiz, my assessment went up high. But if you ask them, they're not really willing to sell their house for what our assessment is. So I think we're okay in most cases. Go ahead.
Everybody's okay, right?
Well,
So in addition to what I just asked for, I want to see the delta between last year on those ranges and this year on the average. Okay, I want to see what it is this year, but I want to see the delta. Maybe you do 2 graphs, I don't know. Because it's probably not that much, but when people hear percents, that's what gets them all fired up. it catches my attention, and that makes me want to ask other questions. And, you know, and me, last year, we got lots of phone calls. That's what I did. I was sitting there doing the calculations along with the citizen to see just how much more money it was. And if it was 40, 50 bucks, it was a non-issue, you know. Sometimes if it gets too much higher, it becomes maybe a larger concern. But I'm just trying to get ahead of the curve here on the information, so I appreciate that. Never mind the fact that the Board of Equalization doesn't get many requests. We get the phone calls, which are more than probably the requests that you get.
Yeah, we
I've got 2 phone calls.
have about 200 phone calls during our informal appeals process. Last year, we had 324, so it was, you know, for the amount of the increase, it was anticipated.
Sure.
So if
Thank
I could ask a question.
Wait a
Mr.
minute,
Chair.
I got one more. You know, it's a shame. It really is, with all the data we have in this world today, that you can't take into account, or the system can't take into account, all the construction we got going on right now with apartments and houses around the valley that don't get assessed, if you will, until the home's sold. To me, that would help dilute things. I mean, if something's under construction and, you know, they got everything on it but the roof, it's going to happen probably this year. It's just a shame there couldn't be some factor to take into account the growth that's occurring in the marketplace now before you finish the assessment. And I'm just going to lay that on the table, and you can think about that. I don't know if any discussion ever occurs in your industry about that, but to me, that's just a shame with all the data we have today. Like Mr. Radford here, he's busy as a builder. He can only build so much at one time, but some of our other larger builders that we have projects going on in my neighborhood, we have to wait until they're gone to settlement and then take it into account on a holistic 100% basis. So it's just amazes me with all the technology and estimating that we have today. We estimate the cost of the house when it's built with materials, although that can be shaky in the marketplace. But to me, that would be a nice way to offset some of the pain that is felt in the marketplace, but also among the citizens. Thank you. Madam Chair. Vice Chair.
Mr. Fay, I have had a couple of phone calls. It sounds like Mr. Mahoney has also. And when they start talking about the increase in their values, and I think one was coming to pay his real estate tax here in the next day or so, and he was talking about, you know, understanding that there would be another significant increase. And he said, what are we supposed to do? And he was a retired individual, and my heart does go out to him. I think that there's an element of our population that truly is struggling with how to, you know, maintain their lifestyle, the home that they've lived in, and how to continue to pay these increasing taxes. And so they say, is it worth my time to go visit with the assessor? And I say, yes. Is that accurate? Is there just good to go in and confirm that all the facts are accurate and, you know, actually they do live on a private road and all these other things? Is it worth their while? I mean, do you encourage that?
We always encourage, we welcome anyone that has any concern or question at all. We want them to, you know, to understand exactly how we derived our assessment. There are some, because we do mass appraising and not single appraisal assessments, there are sometimes things might be overlooked when you're doing a neighborhood versus a home and 3 similar comps.
I appreciate you saying that, because I encouraged, the phone call I took today, I encouraged this gentleman to still make the call and to visit with you, just to make sure that everything was accurate as it had been recorded.
And just to remind everyone also, there's the tax freeze program for the elderly,
And we
too,
talked
so
about
might
that
be
too.
something.
And that we may have to have an ongoing conversation with that about some of our limits, income limits and things like that.
Yes,
I know that there were some conversations about that, about how we may need to go back and look at that just because of inflation, what it used to be and what it is now. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Fay.
Thank you. Thank you, Martha. And by the way, I'll go ahead and throw another one in here. We know about the construction. What about the economic development successes we've had this past year? I think that was a watershed year for Roanoke County. It's a shame that something like that couldn't have a factor or multiplier added into this mix to help dilute some of the pain.
I think that's going to be up to us.
Yeah, but I will tell you this, Mr. Kaywood, I have, after talking to some of the board members, a list of things we need to look into, and I do know the senior rates were being looked into already by Ms. Owens and And you, so.
Our new commissioner has been very helpful in that project already. So
What's that?
I said our new commissioner has been very
Who's
helpful.
that? Who's our new commissioner?
I think he's
Oh.
back here.
Yeah. You know, he knows where he came from, so I'm sure
Yeah.
he's working on it.
So he has
Thank you.
given us some great data that we're working on to share with you very shortly.
Well, gee whiz, I'm sorry he got ahead of us, but we've got a shopping list too. Thank you very much.
But he's not old enough.
Not yet. He's preparing for his future. All right, thank you very much for that briefing. Item D, new business, resolution accepting the employees of the Roanoke County Commission of the Revenue into the personnel system of the County of Roanoke. Chair recognizes Peter Lubeck, County Attorney.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The next two items on your agenda are resolutions in which it is proposed that the board accept the employees of our two newly elected constitutional officers, our Commissioner of Revenue, Mr. Jason Peters, who I would again like to recognize, and our Clerk of Court, Mr. Michael Gallagher, who is also here present with us. And I would just like to pause momentarily to welcome them and congratulate them on their elections. And we are all very excited to work with them in these new capacities. But these two new resolutions are for the board to accept their employees into the county's personnel system. Section 6.02 of the Roanoke County Charter provides for a personnel system and requires that the personnel system include four different things. The first is a classification plan for service. The second is a staff development plan. Third, a uniform pay plan. And fourth, a procedure for resolving grievances for employees of the board. The charter further states that employees of constitutional officers may participate in the county's personnel system at the discretion of the board and upon concurrence of the constitutional officer. And under the previously elected Commissioner of Revenue and Clerk of Circuit Court, and with their concurrence, the board had approved participation of their employees' participation in the county's personnel system. However, the election and assumption of office of a new constitutional officer revokes the former constitutional officer's decision to participate in the personnel system. Accordingly, a decision by the new constitutional officer to participate in the county personnel system is necessary, and both Mr. Peters and Mr. Gallagher have, in writing, expressed their consent to have their employees participate in the county's personnel system. Item D1 of your agenda is a resolution accepting the employees of the Commissioner of Revenue into the personnel system, and item D2 of your agenda is a resolution accepting the employees of the Clerk of Circuit Court into the personnel system. I, of course, recommend that the board first act on item D1 and subsequently act on item D2, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Thank you. This time, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the resolution.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would move that we adopt the resolution under item D1 to accept the employees of the Commissioner of the Revenue into the personnel system of Roanoke County.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? There being none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes. And item T2, resolution accepting the employees of the Roanoke County Clerk of the Court into the personnel system of the County of Roanoke. Mr. Lubeck, you've already
Yes, sir.
made your statement, so I will ask for a motion to adopt this resolution.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Radford. Any discussion? There being none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes. And welcome too, gentlemen. Thank you for getting to work right away on your new jobs. And so good to see you here. Under appointments, item E, does any board member have an appointment that's not been given to the clerk? I see there's one for the Roanoke County Board of Zoning Appeals. Anyone got anything on that?
I got a question, though. Last meeting, I asked for us to advertise that for Windsor Hills.
Sure.
Was that done?
I will need to check on that. If that has not been done, we will get on that.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anyone else? Nothing? Moving on to item F, the consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered by the board to be routine and will be enacted by one resolution in the form or forms listed below. If discussion is desired, an item will be removed from the consent agenda and it will be considered separately. Does any board member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion? Okay. With that said, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the resolution.
Motion to adopt the resolution.
Second.
Second, thank you very much. Is there any discussion? There being none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes, thank you. Item G, citizens' comments and communications. I don't have any. Do you, Madam Clerk? Okay, moving on to item H, reports. I ask for a motion to receive and file the following reports.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes. Item I, reports and inquiries of board members. We'll start with Vice Chair Hooker today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of comments to make, and one is I truly appreciate Mr. Fay's presentation. It was very informative, and I think that we have a good process in place. I think there's a lot of work in front of us as a board on what we want to do going forward with some of our tax rates and what we need to do to tighten our fiscal belt inside the county and look to see if there are opportunities for some relief going forward. But I would really like to push that direction. I also want to thank my fellow board members and staff in particular. What a great year we had, and I really appreciate all that was done for what I believe was really a great year, especially in economic development. Thank you to Richard, to Megan. I think she stepped out, and there she is. And appreciate all that was done. I feel really good about what Roanoke County is doing, and I anticipate additional good news, and we look forward to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Mahoney?
Nothing, sir.
Nothing to report, eh? All right, Mr. Radford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And ditto to what Martha Hooker just said from the Windsor Hills. Our next board meeting, be prepared. We're going to honor a state champion from Hidden Valley High School. So we're looking forward to that.
We are?
Yes.
That's awesome.
And I too, thank you, Mr. Fay, for that detailed assessment of the real estate valuation. And welcome our two new constitutional officers here today. And hope to see you guys hit the ground running here real soon, if you haven't already. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Last but not least, I just want to thank Martha Hooker, our vice chair, who served as chair last year, for leading us through the year. That year sometimes seems longer than 12 months, doesn't it? Yeah. No doubt about that. So appreciate your time as chair, and look forward to working with all of you all this year. I want to thank you fellow board members for nominating me as chair. I'm glad I was on best behavior so that you did that. We do have a good board, and we're going to continue to have a good board, and we're one that puts Roanoke County first in everything we do and all the decisions we make, because we know it's not only going to affect the county, but it'll affect the citizens we represent in our districts, which are about 19,000 citizens. Later this week, we will have some news on an appointment for the Vinton District Supervisor to serve until the November general election. Lastly, I want to congratulate and thanks to our clerk to the board, Deborah Jacks, who will retire later this month, and more on that later on in future meetings, I'm sure. With that said, we will now move on to item J, closed meeting pursuant to the Code of Virginia as follows. We move to go into closed session pursuant to the Code of Virginia, section 2.2-3711.A.1, personnel, namely discussion concerning appointments to the Audit Committee, the Roanoke Valley Cable Television Committee, Chief Local Elected Officials Consortium, County of Roanoke Towing Board, Virginia Association of Counties Liaison Board Member, Virginia's first Regional Industrial Facility Authority, and Western Virginia Regional Jail Authority. And section 2.2-3711.A.1, Personnel, namely discussion concerning salary for constitutional officers, namely the clerk of the court and the commissioner of the revenue. And Section 2.2, 3711.A.3 of the Code of Virginia to discuss or consider the acquisition of real property in the Cave Spring Magisterial District for a public purpose where discussion is an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body. I ask for a second.
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes. Prior to recessing to the third floor, I would like to announce that following the board's closed session, the board will recess this meeting until January 11th at 4 p.m., at which time the board will act to appoint a new member of the Board of Supervisors to fill the vacant seat in the Vinton Magisterial District. The board will now stand in recess to the third floor for the closed session. Item K. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
And sir, that would be something that the board would take up following the closed session.
The resolution.
Good.
Yes, sir.
That wasn't changed on my copy. Thank you. Last minute changes sometimes trip us up.
Yes, sir.
We will not adjourn, but we will be moving to adjourn this meeting to be recessed until January 11th, 2024 at 4 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll.
And yes, sir, that can be done at this time as well.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Radford?
Yeah.
Mr. North?
Yes. Thank you. Have a good day and Happy New Year.
Farmers say the German public is on their side, and among the protesters earlier was tradesman Noah Wildfang. I'm here in solidarity with the farmers, Wildfang tells German television. My neighbours are all farmers, and I want to protect them, he says. But not everyone is so understanding. A video of one angry motorist has gone viral on social media. If you're earning so little, you should raise your prices. This man shouts up at one farmer perched on his tractor. My workers pay their taxes,